You are listening to the Call to Action podcast, where we aim to inspire, educate, and inform entrepreneurs and self-starters on tech and tips related to navigating this ever-changing world. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to episode 44 of the Call to Action podcast. I am your host, Shantae, and today we are having a fireside chat with Tiffany C. Lewis, who is an author and also a beta reader. So we're going to learn all about that in the show today. Now, before I bring our guest onto the show, I have an inspirational quote that I'd like to share. And here is the inspirational quote for episode 44 of the Call to Action podcast. If your dreams don't scare you, they aren't big enough. I'm going to say that one more time. If your dreams don't scare you, they aren't big enough. And that is by the late and great Muhammad Ali. If you missed episode 43 of the Call to Action podcast, as always, it is a must listen. My guests for that episode actually had 3 on that episode. I had Rashmi P. Menon, who is a multi-genre author and editor. I also had Lolly A. Love, who is an award-winning author and Amazon bestseller of dark fantasy, science fiction, paranormal thriller, and metaphysical poetry. And I also had Amarina Carlton, who is a Southern fiction writer. You can hear all about the great things these ladies are doing in that episode, but in the meantime, take a listen to this clip from episode 43 of the Call to Action podcast.
Because you're interacting with them, they want to know what you are talking about, so they come to your account, and then there's a little bit of commenting and there's a little bit of chatting that goes on, and that's what actually helps you develop the algorithm. Constant posting and a lot of probably RTing for Twitter, and just not talking about it is definitely not going to help.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And humanizing is very important too. Like, they need to see that you are a person, not just an idea or a book,
Again, you can hear the full episode on ctamarketing.biz. And when you're there, click on podcast on the main menu to access that episode as well as past episodes. As mentioned in the intro, I have Tiffany C. Lewis, who is the author of 7 fiction books, mostly crime fiction, and has been published more than a dozen times in anthologies and magazines. Tiffany discovered in 2010 that providing feedback to her author friends about their manuscripts wasn't just a nice favor for them. Since then, she has voluntarily beta read 6 to 10 full manuscripts a year in hopes of learning more about the craft, as well as helping authors who need feedback before publication. She currently resides in Sacramento, California with her family and Miniature Pinscher. So everyone, please join me in welcoming Tiffany to the show. Tiffany, welcome to the Call to Action podcast. How are you doing today?
I am good. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too, Tiffany. I have been waiting on this episode with you, and I'm so glad that we are doing a show together.
Finally.
Yes. And you know who we got to thank before we even get to the next part. You know who we got to bring up real quick? The guy who put us together.
Yes, the amazing, the magnificent York Campbell.
Yes. If I had sound effects, I'd put him in here. Yes. York is awesome.
He's amazing. It is time, like I told you when we first talked, for the 5-minute York session where we are just going to sing his praises. I appreciate every single thing that he has done, every connection he's ever made for me, including introducing me to you.
Oh, same here. Yes.
Yes. So many other people who have really been, the thing about it is every single person that he interacts with is so supportive. And for me, even though they don't know me, because York has that energy when he says, Tiffany's awesome, they take his word for it, and I have to live up to that standard every single day.
So. That's what he did to me, and I didn't question. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. Have her contact me. I'll contact her. It was just like that. I didn't even question. I was like, I knew it.
He's definitely that kind of person. Very giving, Great listener. When I tell him my crazy ideas, he is very patient and listens to what I want to do, and he helps me make a way. So yes, yay for York. He's the
Yay,
best.
York! Yay. Okay, now we're probably going to go back and give more York more attention in this podcast. He's going to be
I'm
so
sure
embarrassed.
he's gonna come up multiple times. Multiple
Yes,
times.
he's done so much. I mean, he has to. He has to.
Yeah.
All right. So, Tiffany, I like to do icebreakers. They're just like a really cool way, fun way for us to get to know you. So, I have an icebreaker for you. And here it is. If you hit the jackpot today, what is the first thing you would buy with your winnings?
Well, I hate to be that cliche person, but I would definitely buy a house. My family, we've moved a lot over my lifetime. And now we live in Sacramento. We do absolutely love it here. But I want to buy a house in the city I grew up in, Oakland, California, so badly. And it is very expensive. So, not to say that financially we would never make it to that mountaintop, but I'm just like, if I had a chunk of money right now, that is the first thing I would do. I would hate to relocate again, but it's really our family's desire to be in that area and own a house there. So then a car. Yeah, so gotta get a house. My dream house is what I would do. Yep.
Yes. So, would you build it from the ground up or just buy one that's already done?
I'm actually not sure because Oakland has really really unique like there's some like places that are like I call them cookie cutter where they've just like cobbled together a bunch of houses that look exactly the same, the newer ones. But there's a rich tradition of like owning your plot in Oakland and in the Bay Area in general. Like you drive down the street and you'll see very nice homes and they all look completely different. And
That's
so
cool. Because now you see
yeah.
subdivisions where they all look alike. They may have something slightly different, like the brick front versus not. It's like that's not
Yeah,
really unique.
pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
The features that you can pick from the catalog are the only way to make your house look different. But in the Bay Area, I think it's just because like the way the population has changed, the age of the city. So there was no like for instance, we lived in Arizona and it's just land everywhere. So anybody could come in and buy so many acres, put up a community, and there you go. All the houses have to look the same because of that. But in Oakland, there's like no room for you to just grab an acre and be like, I'm going to put a couple houses. Like everything is touching everything. There's all these established businesses that are not selling their business to someone who wants to like make this or that. Um,
Awesome.
so
Gotta
it's,
keep
yeah,
that tradition
it's,
there. Keep that.
I
Yeah, that's
know.
good.
I know. I love seeing all the strange looking houses. So Berkeley is even more. Berkeley is even more flamboyant and we're not above living in Berkeley either. So we love the whole Bay Area. There's just like we love it. Yeah. I could go on forever.
All right, Tiffany, thank you for sharing your icebreaker with us and what you would do with your winnings from the jackpot. So I'm surprised you didn't say you would give me like a little donation. I mean, I would take a nice little break off of something from that.
You know what? The list of people who want to be included there is so long. But yes,
I
you're on the
bet.
list. You're on the
Okay.
list.
And I will do the same for you. So
Thank you. Look what York has created. Two besties. We're like putting each other on our millionaire list.
I know. That York. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So now, Tiffany, I know that you have a book out called Helpless, right?
Yes,
And that book, it's in print and audio version, right?
it is. And of course, ebook can't go without that. But
Okay, so you have
yeah,
print,
it's
ebook, and
a
audio. Okay.
yeah. It's a women's lit collection. Basically, it's 8 short stories with female main characters, and the idea of it is just like I actually spoke to York. Here he comes again. I I spoke to York about the book shortly after it came out. He interviewed me on his podcast, and basically he made a comment that kind of solidified or like made true what I was trying to do with the book. And he was saying that he didn't realize, until halfway through, that all the stories were female main characters. And I told him, like, that was the point. I wrote it not with the idea of every single person has to be a woman, every single situation has to be, a female character's issue. It was just like these were the stories that I kind of had in my head. And my girls would be there to take care of it. Like some of the stories you could easily just swap out for a male character and it wouldn't change any dynamic of the story. So I did that on purpose. I didn't want it to be like a feminist book. I just wanted it to be a woman's stories with female characters because those were my homies at the time. Like those were the characters that were in my head. Because I've written male characters before. So it's really like the story that I'm most passionate about because of that. Like, I love the feeling of it. I love short stories. And it's been so, like, such a journey going through with this book, the writing, the editing, and all of this. But getting it into audio was really like the exciting part of the whole process.
Now, did you record it yourself or did you have someone do it for you?
All right, I'm going to tell the abridged version of this story because it's
Okay.
actually really long.
Okay.
I did not record it. When the book was close to being done, I was just dreaming of the fantastical release we were planning and all this kind of stuff. Like, I am so excited. This book is amazing. And I just sent out a tweet to my favorite audiobook narrator. And before I let you know how amazing her response was, I found this narrator on this show called Nailed It. It's a Netflix show where they bake very badly. Nicole Byer is the host, and I always stalk the people on the show.
Wait, so
If
it's a
they,
show where they're baking? I'm sorry, I haven't heard of it. It's like a
yes,
cooking show?
it's a
Okay.
baking show for people who are really, really bad at baking. It's like it's more like a comedy show. It's not necessarily intended to be like very enlightening, but
Oh, okay.
um, I mean, I still learn a lot about baking when I watch it because what they're doing is like way beyond anything I would think to do so badly in the kitchen.
Oh.
Um, but it's so funny. It's like a kind of a long-standing Netflix show, actually. We were super proud. I think they have 5 seasons, and that's like unheard of. So yeah, me and my daughter watch it quite a bit. So basically, if I see someone on the show who has they always put like what they do for a living.
Mhm.
So if I see an author, I'm immediately looking that person up. Like, what are their books and where do they work and what's their publication style? I'm all over it. And so the woman's name is Tanya Eby, and she was on Nailed It. She won her episode, which I was so
Oh,
excited.
cool.
And on hers, it said audiobook narrator and author. And when I looked her up, sure enough, she is an amazing audiobook narrator. I had already heard some of her books in my Audible account. They were already there.
Oh, cool. Wow. That's
Yeah,
amazing. Oh my gosh.
crazy. Such a
Yes.
coincidence. So I started following her on Instagram, Twitter, and then as all this is going on, I'm doing Helpless, and I'm like, man, I need a female voice for the narrator for this, and like all of that would be great. And then literally, just like how they say, put it out in the universe,
Mhm.
I literally just tweeted, it's my dream to have Tanya Eby narrate my book that's not even out right now. And, whatever, like nothing, I was not expecting her to reply at all. And she did. She literally
What?
said, yes, she literally said, send me your project, send me your script, let me review it, I'll let you know. And I'm just thinking to myself, this is going to cost me a lot of money, but it worked out. It worked out, and yes, Tanya Eby narrated my book. I'm so happy with the work that she did. I cannot thank her enough. And it's funny because if you go to Audible and you find Helpless and you click Tanya Eby's name, it makes me feel like a rock star because the other people
Oh,
who are in her book list are like New York Times best-selling authors, and I'm like, yes, that's
that
gonna be
means
me.
you're one too, Tiffany. That is we're gonna see you up there too.
Yes, so such a crazy experience, but basically, like, the short answer is I did not record my audiobook, but
But I'm
it was
surprised. You
still.
have such a nice voice.
Thank you.
You really do.
Yeah, and it's actually York again
Right.
is he's part of the reason that I have grown comfortable with my voice in the first place. I never was like a fan of my voice. But before I started my podcast, I recorded for his. And I also think I did for Brent, one of his episodes as well. But it's through York. Like York asked me if I'd be willing to do it. He provided me with what I needed. And yeah, he just encouraged me to, use my voice for my podcast. So I just don't know about narrating books. That I'll leave that to you, because I'm like, I don't know if I want to read a whole book, and it's hard enough for me to read and edit my own books sometimes. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Narrating is different. I'll save my stories for offline, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but that York, he definitely like he got well. I think we've done a project together with York on one of his
Yeah.
podcasts. Yeah, because
Yes,
we
we
record
did.
separately and then we send our files in, and then he makes magic and puts all together and creates a beautiful
Yep.
show or beautiful
Absolutely.
episode. But
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, he's definitely done that. He's encouraged me to do it too. He's like, Shantae, you can do it. I'm like, okay, York, and I'll just do it.
And that's it. And now we're out of our comfort zone and plunging over the edge
Right. Together.
together. Here we
Growing wings
go.
as we land, we're just growing wings on our way down. That's what he does.
I
But
know.
yeah.
He's catching us if we fall. That cliche, like, don't worry, it's okay, we'll be right. He's giving us the worst case scenarios, and he's moving us along. The idea for my podcast, we can segue a little bit.
Oh yeah, I
But
do. I wanted to ask you about that. I want to hear about that. So tell us, yeah, you do.
yeah.
Tell us about your new podcast you have.
Yeah. So the idea actually came from a wonderful mentor, Monica Cox. I beta read for her. She encouraged me to like believe that what I was doing was really important and impactful. And I've been beta reading for over 12 years now. And
Wow.
it's yeah, and like my bio says, like I didn't even realize that at first what I was doing was beta reading. And so over the years of just constantly reading for other people and offering feedback, learning the best way to give feedback has created what I do now. And so when I worked with Monica, she just said, you need to give this information, to more people. And my thing about beta reading is I believe in the volunteerism of it. So I don't charge people. And when I was trying to think of how I could give my advice without charging people.
Hmm.
That's why the podcast came up.
Now,
And
Tiffany,
so
that's a lot of reading. I mean, you're. I mean, to not charge and to do all of that reading and give advice. I mean,
I love it.
not once. You don't want to say, "Hey, I charge this much per
No,
hour."
no. Well, and so here's the thing about it. First of all, I've received gifts before, but I never ask for anything. I just don't. I just can't. But my thing about it is when you take away that volunteerism of it, it becomes a job. Like as soon as someone gives you money, it just minimizes to me. Like I go to work. I work with kids. I'm a preschool teacher by trade,
Oh,
and oh my gosh, I love it. I could talk all day about
that's
my
like
little cuties.
I know, and that's just the best age. They're so impressionable. You can help mold, them and into being
Oh
really
my
good
gosh.
people. And I could see you doing that. You're such a sweetheart. Okay, go ahead.
Well, and I will thank you.
You're
I will
welcome.
say one little thing that just made my year from my class. I have one kiddo who I had last year, but we were all in distance learning. And so this year, the family has really opened up to me. They invited me to a birthday party, which was an awesome cultural experience for me. They're from Afghanistan. And so it was amazing to see their cultural dress and what they were doing to celebrate my student's birthday. But during the year, she told me that she wanted to be my teacher. She wanted to teach with me in my class. And
Oh, that is so sweet and so adorable.
well, yeah, and then me and mom kind of looked at each other because before she decided she wanted to be a teacher in my class, she was telling mom she wanted to be a dentist. Because
Oh.
mom works in a dental practice. And I'm just like, we need to steer her back to that. Like, I
That
love
just
you,
shows
but
how
I do not.
impressionable you are. That's good.
Yeah. And
Wow.
and I agree, like I do want to obviously have that kind of impact on my kids, but I want her to be a dentist. So let's just massage this idea into her. But back to the volunteerism
Hmm.
with the beta reading. Basically, as soon as you start to include pay, there's the deadlines. There's, the author has a little bit more control over the situation than I would like. Not to say that I want my authors to be powerless when they work with me, but for me, reading is fun. Reading is interesting, and talking about the craft of writing is another thing that I really like about it. Like talking about plot and how this character made me feel, and I don't want it to be like bogged down with like the things that come from being paid or having like a financial obligation. Almost every single time I've had, maybe in 12 years truly, I maybe had 5 people that I beta read for who immediately when I was done reading for them were not in touch with me, did not follow me on social media, so they were never, reaching out to me. I wasn't seeing their tweets or their posts.
No, thank you.
Like almost no one has like disappeared after I've been done. They've almost everyone has reached out to me, asked me for clarification or more
Okay.
advice.
Okay.
Half of them are, you see what I mean? Like
Okay. Okay.
the relationship that I've developed with them has been long term.
Oh,
And
good. Good.
when you pay somebody, you maybe aren't. You're more like critical of what they said or how they provided their service to you, or it's just not the same. So as no matter how long it takes me, typically a well edited book, which is always what I want, by the way. The best
Mhm. Me
edited,
too,
the best
Tiffany.
edit. Yeah,
Inside joke there.
yeah, so the best edit you can put on it, please save your beta reader, because that's another thing, and I guess we can get into that later on, but
Yeah, I got some
as a beta
questions for
reader,
you. Mhm.
yes. But as a beta reader, we're supposed to get that well edited draft, and if it's really good, then it's like me reading a story, and I love that. So I'm just taking my notes. It'll take me about a month, 3 weeks if I'm really not doing anything else. I'm moving kind of slow now because I'm working on my own book at the same time. Yeah, that's how I end up doing like 6 to 10 a year. If the project's really big or kind of time consuming, I can do 6. If I have a couple of shorties mixed in, like I have a novella coming up that I'm going to work on that's only 120 pages, but then I have like a 300-page story coming up too. And so, yeah, it does take a little bit of time, but I love it. And a lot of people, that's one other thing about it, is that because I don't charge, because of the level of assistance that I offer, even though I don't charge, I get a lot of return authors. And this is almost like being a teacher and like seeing your student learning, because every time they send me a new book, it's like better and better and better. And I'm like, yes, this is so good. And it's so, refreshing to like be a partner with them through their journey.
So I have a couple of questions. Now, I listened to, I think it was your first podcast where you talked about, or maybe it was your second one, where you talked about the different types of beta readers. So my first question is, can you share with us what you shared in that episode? At least just kind of touch on the different types. Because when I was listening, I was like, wow, I wish I would have known that. Like I didn't know about beta readers. Um, just so you know, I did like an audio book like back in 2020. It's short, like an hour, but it's more like informative and educational. It's not like a story or a novel or anything like that. But I still think I probably could have used you back then. It would have been nice to know you. But could you
Yeah.
like share with us like just the different types of beta readers?
Yeah, so I just call, like, it's a group, it's a reader group. And so like the very first, like if we're going in levels, I think that's like the easiest way to explain it.
Okay.
um it's either, you can say levels or like order of operation. So the very first reader that you may ever encounter is a critique partner, and that person basically helps you at conception. If you have an idea, this is the person you can call and just be like, man, I have a really good idea for a story, let me tell you about it, what do you think? Go over my outline, does my outline have holes in it, or whatever. This is the person that you just kind of, they know you so well, they know your writing style, they know your crazy ideas, and they can advise you on ways to tighten things up or ways to loosen up or whatever you need before you even put the words to the paper. This is a
Okay.
critique partner. The second one is an alpha reader. An alpha reader reads your story before it's edited. So, like a first draft, very rough, very ugly,
Kinda like
like
a brain
no,
dump of my thoughts in a book form, kind of?
pretty much, yeah. You've just only said the end and nothing else. You haven't gone back, you haven't double checked, you haven't removed plot holes or inconsistencies. It's just like, so that person, the alpha reader, is prepared for like a crazy experience through your grammar and punctuation errors. And a lot of times they are your critique partner as well, because that person can follow you through the whole process. They can be all the readers. Then the next is the beta reader. That's after you have edited the story, maybe like 2 to 3 drafts at least. And it's really clean and it could potentially be read just as you're planning to publish it.
Okay. So at that point, it's like pretty much ready to be published. You're just having the beta reader just kind of like look over it for you and maybe find some things that could have been missed in the first reading of it or in the alpha reading of it.
Yeah. And
Okay.
actually, that person comes before, if you're paying for a professional editor, the beta reader comes before the professional editor. So the
Okay.
book is not like perfect, but it's more polished than the alpha reader or the critique partner would see it.
Okay.
So then after that, you get ARC readers or advanced review copy readers, and they will read your book after alpha, after beta, after editing, if you're going to use a professional editor, which I do suggest. And
Hmm.
that book is literally done. It has a cover, it's formatted, it's like you could hit print and be ready to sell it right now. But you don't sell it, you give it to advanced readers and they read it and they leave their reviews on the day that you actually do release the book. So this is how people get like 1,000 reviews on their first day publishing their book. Um,
Okay.
so an ARC reader is not exactly like the other readers, but they fall under kind of that critique category. They still critique your book before a paid customer, basically. And I think that's it. I think those 1, 2, 3, 4 are the ones that I talk about in my show.
Okay. Okay. So for example, if I were to have my book beta read by you, do you give me like how was the feedback? Is it like we have a conversation, you're like, "Hey Shantae, this was great," but or do you write something up for me? Like how does that what do I get in return like when you do that for me?
So I'm a pro, which means I can do anything. And usually I ask the author, how do you want feedback? So there's a few levels. Like the person that I'm reading for coming up, he has a list of questions he wants me to answer. So he's providing me with that list. And when I just confirm, like, hey, is there anything else that you need? He said anything is fine. So that means that I can leave additional comments on top of his questions. So in a format like that, where you like already have your questions, a lot of times that comes because someone has really polished their manuscript. They feel like it's already pretty good. And these are like their concerns. Then you have on the other hand where someone may give it to me and just say, whatever, like I don't have questions. I don't just help me.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so when that happens, I'll actually take their Word document and I will use the track change function to add comments. So anywhere where I kind of see an issue, one thing that I love to do is analyze characters because I like characters. Characters mean everything to me. And so, say for instance, there's a character in the book and I am getting to know them basically from page 1 until, oops, there's something here that I'm just like, I don't think my girl would do that. So I will leave a comment right in that spot where the character maybe says something strange or behaves in a way that I don't think reflects their character. And I will literally just put my comment right there on the Word document. So I will save a copy and send it back. So that's what they would like literally get from me. If they don't want track changes or if they send me a PDF, then I would make a Word document in order to send back to them. But basically, every author can and does ask for feedback in their own kind of special way. In my show, I think the next episode I'm going to talk about, or two episodes coming, I am going to talk about the method for collecting feedback. Because again, some people don't know how to ask for feedback, like what they should ask for. And it really depends on their needs in the long run.
Okay. Okay. So while we're talking about your podcast, where can they find it? It's on which networks is it on?
It's on everything. The only one I'm still waiting for is Pandora. But
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Okay.
it's on Apple, Google, it's on Spotify, so it's everywhere. And the website is betareaderbits.podbean.com. So
Okay, cool. Cool. And you do a really good job of promoting on Twitter too. I see you have your clips out there, which entices me to click on it and listen. So that's how I
yeah,
found it too. I'm like, oh, her new episode's out. So let me click and see what she's doing. So,
yeah.
and it's really good. And again, York, can I bring up York again?
Yes, please.
He did a great job with your podcast. It sounds awesome.
Yes. Oh, by the way, York Campbell is the producer of my podcast. It just goes on and on. It's never going
Right.
to stop.
It sounds so good. It really does. It sounds really good.
And to layer on another compliment for him, because we just haven't done enough. Um,
Mhm.
this is one thing. My boyfriend listens to the show, and he is always laughing and talking about how engaging the show is, because York produces he includes the sounds and the energy, the fun
Mhm.
energy that I want the podcast to have. And because my boyfriend doesn't know about York's podcast or hasn't listened to it, and he knows York through all my chatterings about how amazing he is all the time. But it's like an experience for me because I'm a longtime fan of York's podcast and now my podcast, and having this experience of kind of getting a behind the scenes look at how he does things, because he does them for me now. And I'm just like, this is so fun and so cool that, like, the way that York puts the show together is just anyone can enjoy it. Like, he's really captured the essence of what I want to, how I want everything to feel.
That
So
is so
it's been
true.
great. Yep.
It is so true. His sound effects and just like you're listening to it, but you're also visualizing as you're listening
Yes.
to the podcast. I think
Yes.
that's what he does really well.
I have to give my favorite thing that he's ever done on for my show is and it's so funny because, like, I just send him my voice, there's
Mhm.
nothing extra. And then when I get back his first edits, it is so funny and interesting what he basically took from what I was saying and what he created. So my favorite thing, and it's in this episode that's out, episode 4.
Mhm.
um we talk about spamming. My friend Joseph is on the show with me, and we're talking about, like, the writing community, Twitter, and using authors as beta readers. And York put in this clip of from a show called Futurama, where they were putting the commercials into people's dreams. And so we were talking about how spam and commercials and, like, all this kind of stuff is pervasive on the show. And he just remembered this clip from the show that embodies exactly what we were talking about. And I was just
See, that's York.
dying laughing. It was so perfect. So my show is like in comparison, York's show is way more fun, I think, than mine. Like, the stories and the engagement on his, that I feel like I'm literally inside of it, is so wonderful on his show. My show is so informational that
Mhm.
it can't be as fun.
No, Tiffany, he makes
But
your informative show like fun and informational at the same time. That
yeah,
color that he adds in by the sound effects and the special audio clips that he puts under like when you're talking, because I heard part of the one episode 4 and I was like, man, that's pretty cool how he does that.
yeah,
So,
he's
yeah.
he's an expert. I'm
Mhm.
really happy. So it definitely makes a all information show with only one host very much more interesting in my opinion.
Yes, like he's filling it in with more. Like I say, he's coloring the
For
show
sure.
in, but yeah,
Yep.
for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so real quick, back to the beta reading part. So for people who are getting criticism and feedback, like when you're
Mhm.
giving them your feedback, what tips, if you have any, do you have for the author for handling some criticism from Tiffany?
And I am very cutthroat. No. Um, my thing is, and actually I'm gonna speak on that, like, personally. I don't know how other beta readers are, because I'm, like, more professional, quote unquote. Like, because I've been doing it for so long, like, I kind of know, and I know what it feels like, because the amount of time I've been giving feedback, I've also been getting feedback. Like I said, the way this started was just two friends being like, hey, you read mine, I'll read yours. And so, but basically, taking criticism is hard. I'm not
Mhm.
gonna, some people don't care at all. Like, I worked with people who I was like, hey, sorry to get rough on this particular topic, but like it really needs to be addressed. And they're like, it's fine. I don't even care. I just want to improve my story. Other people can get really inside of themselves. And I'm actually one of those people where feedback does bother me. It feels nitpicky and it feels like impersonal because the reader's just taking what you're putting on the paper and their mind is analyzing it, and what they think is good or bad, their own pet peeves, their own energy is put
Mhm.
into their comments. So, what I always advise authors to do is actually, when you get all your feedback, all of it. So, like, say you have 5 readers, wait until every single one gives you their feedback. Read all of it. Every single comment, every single note, every single email, whatever they've sent you, read all of it. And then don't do anything with it for like a week, 2 weeks. Just let it be inside of your mind and go about your day, go about your business. Just, it's almost like your brain has a chance to process the information without you fretting, without you actively being involved. Your mind just does its thing. It's brilliant. It's amazing.
So it's kinda like leaving some room so it's not so much emotion when you're going back.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
what ends up happening because
Yeah.
your brain just does it in a really like simply processed manner. It's not just like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe they didn't like my character Becky." It's like, "No, what they said about Becky was, this kind of behavior I didn't like because X, Y, and Z." And
Mhm.
so once you've let your mind just subconsciously mull over those things, then after a week or two, you go back and you reread everything and you decide what you're going to take, because this is my mantra when it comes to beta reading. You are only supposed to take the advice that improves your story. And so if somebody is saying they don't like Becky because her hair is red, obviously we're not going to worry about that because her hair is red because that's what we want as the author, and
Mhm.
we're in charge of her hair. no no one can tell us that her hair needs to be brown.
Right.
And so something like that you can just ignore, you can just squash it. But if they're saying that they don't think Becky is well developed because there's not enough emotion from her character, or that, maybe you want to address that. And so because you love Becky so much, you have to give your brain a chance to just be more subjective about her and about the feedback. So I always say, take a little break. It's intense for some people. Some people it's not intense for them at all, but
Mhm.
getting that little break and letting your mind subconsciously manage the suggestions is always really good.
Wow, Tiffany, that's really good advice because just the thought of having 5 different people say something about my book, I'd be like, "Wait, excuse me?"
Like, hold up.
Right,
That's
what
not
you mean by
you
that?
you don't even know Becky like that.
Right.
But the truth is that, like I said, whatever you put on the paper is their expectation of Becky. And
Mhm.
maybe you missed something because technically Becky is within you. Like, you know her so well. But
Mhm.
if you don't include that one little sentence that shows her emotional wound, or that one little sentence that makes her more likable, it's in your head, but they don't see it on the paper. So sometimes, yeah, you just have to take a step back and be like, we're back on this journey with Becky now. And making her the character that I want them to see. That's really what those kind of things are about. But your brain has to be in a space to accept that misstep. You know what I mean? And that's what the
Yeah.
2 weeks really does for people, I think.
That's really good advice. Wow, like, really, and it makes sense. And just, it's kind of like taking a break, like you said, just processing the information, not being emotional about it, but
Mm-hmm.
picking out what is going to improve your story.
Yep. And nothing else. Look, nothing else. I'm very serious about that. Don't just put stuff in because people say it. It has to actually make your story better. You're the author, you know your vision. And so even if Tiffany says that,
Mhm.
because I do have people who've worked with me for so long that they're at a point where they like want to take my advice. But it's like, if I'm off base, then ignore that comment. And that, I think that's important. Like, you have to own your ownership of the story in that way. But that also doesn't mean being closed off, you know.
Mhm.
I think people need to be open to what other people are saying, but also know that you're guiding the ship. So
Makes sense. So, okay, let me ask you this now. Is it suggested? Like, do you think it's good to have like multiple beta readers, or is I've always thought just one after and literally like I just learned about this from your podcast. So I didn't even know about this. Although I am friends with the writing community like deeply, but I
right.
didn't know about the beta reading. Like I don't hear that in the conversation a lot. I usually just see
Right.
people talking about their querying or their, their what they're writing, how many words they've completed.
Hmm.
But so this concept for me is new and probably for others as well. So do you think it's good to have multiple beta readers? And then is there a limit to how many you should have so you're not overwhelmed with just too much input from too many different minds? Like, what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, so I one is not an option in my opinion because I think of it like this, you know how they say two heads are better than one.
Hmm.
Well, some people don't get professional editors to review their work before they go into self-publication. So when they say two heads as a writer, I'm like your head doesn't count because the story came from your head. So you need at least two other opinions to to kind of get that. It's like the odds even out a little more when you have like someone who could potentially disagree with the other reader. So let's go
Hmm.
back to Becky. She's my girl. One person might say, I really loved Becky. I felt she was really well fleshed out. I knew her and understood her. And another person could just be like, I didn't care for Becky. She was flighty. And, so then it depends. Like when you have these conflicting ideas, you either want a third opinion, which is great. Having three to five is my average. I think that's like a good number. Three is good because then you have a tiebreaker, right?
Okay. Okay.
Um, and you can decide like, okay, I wanted Becky to be likable, so I want to go back to the people who didn't like Becky and let me look at what they're saying why they didn't like Becky because the other person was just like in love with Becky. So what they're saying doesn't help my story improve. It just makes me feel better that I wrote Becky. So the other person, the other two people who didn't like Becky, let's see what they're talking about. And, so then three people balance everything out. It's like, okay, one person did, two people didn't, or vice versa. Or if all three of them, this is like the holy grail, if all three of them really liked Becky and she was perfect, then good. Check her off the list, right?
Okay. Okay.
Now, as far as like too many, 10 is too many. And it's really only because of the amount of feedback you're going to get. And
Yeah.
this
So too many
again,
concerns. Like that's too many
yeah.
different. Yeah.
It's like and I guess it depends on how you're looking for feedback because for me, like my bread and butter is when I do the track changes. So I give the best feedback when I'm able to leave a comment through the whole manuscript, like every place that I see an issue. If I can leave a comment, then you're getting like a play by play on your manuscript as opposed to like a form where you just ask me to answer questions. So if you just need like three questions answered from 10 people, that's not really a lot. But if you want 10 people to read your whole manuscript and leave comments, that's a lot.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, five is like a good middle ground. Three is a must, like two to three. And two is like if you have really good readers who are really going to lay into this story and really give you their opinions. Three is like the balancing act that you're kind of looking for. But anything more than 10 is like, whew, it's going to be a lot to get through,
Yeah. It
And
sounds like it.
if you use the method that I suggested where you read all the comments and then think about it, you're going to have to think about it for 3 weeks because there's
Right.
just so much to process. So yeah, 3 to 5 is I think the butter zone for that.
Okay. Okay. So my next question is what should an author look for in a potential beta reader?
There are I think I had it at six criteria.
Okay.
Again, this is something that I mentioned in my show because a lot of people ask me if their family or friends should or could read for them. It's like they're right there. Like, why not ask them? I think I talked about this in episode 3, but basically they have to meet a certain criteria. And I think every beta reader needs to meet this criteria. They have to be pretty well read or they have to like enjoy reading. I know that probably sounds crazy, but it's like, of course. But
Right.
sometimes, sometimes when we're desperate for feedback, we're just like, you're sitting on the couch doing nothing, read this. But like if they don't even care to read, then they're not going to put their all into it. So they need to enjoy reading. It would be great if they like your genre. Like I write crime fiction, so I like to find people who also know and like that genre. The person has to be comfortable giving criticism. And I use that word in the most technical form because I
Okay.
think when people think of criticism, they think of like bad talking. But basically, what I mean is if your friend goes to art museums and can explain to you why they like or don't like a piece of art in the gallery, that person is being critical. And that's what you want. Someone who can like verbalize how they feel about a piece of art. Because what I think a lot of authors get stuck with someone who's just like, this was good. And it's like, no, I need a little more than that. Like what
Right. How can I make
what
this
did
better? Or what
yeah,
didn't you like about it? Yeah.
what did
Mhm.
you actually like? Like what specifically, which was your favorite character? Or and this is why we use like beta forms or we send out questions because we want to get that tailored feedback. But even if you ask someone who was your favorite character, they can just say Mary. So you want someone you
Yeah.
want someone who can actually say, I liked Mary because, and it could actually inform your writing. So finding someone who's critical. And then the last one, which is not my whole six, but you can listen to that episode and you'll hear all of them. Um, but the other one that I find very important is that whoever you get to read for you, they need to value what you're doing. And this is another case where your uncle's sitting on the couch, he's not doing anything. You want him, you need some feedback, you're curious what someone is going to think. But if that person thinks that this is a hobby or thinks that it's silly that you spend all this time writing, I mean, no matter how kindly they respond, writing is hard.
Mhm.
Writing is a job. Writing is an industry. It is very important. And if you're doing it especially to relieve yourself of some anxieties or to help you through a point in your life, it's not just like something you're doing. And so making sure that whoever reads for you values what you're doing is actually something I think a lot of people don't realize that they should really look out for. A person who values what you're doing will take the job seriously and they'll offer good feedback.
That wow, Tiffany, that's really, really good. Very good information. Wow, really?
This is 12 years of me thinking about and going through readers and also like the passion for it. Like I have had people read for me before who didn't they just didn't like care that I was writing a story. And again, it wasn't mean. They were just like they just didn't value it. And so their feedback was subpar. And I was like, all
Mhm.
right, never again.
Right.
if if this person doesn't think I'm a serious author, if they don't value what I'm doing or like my genre or know how to give good feedback, I'm just not going to use anyone. Like I know that's extreme, but it's just like, no, I don't need it's not I'm not that desperate for feedback that I'm going to use someone who doesn't value what I'm doing.
Yeah, wow, that's very interesting. So let me ask you, because I know we are active members, both of us, in York, in the writing community on Twitter. So with your beta readers or the people like that ask you to read books, or even people, that have read books that you've written, do you find that you get people from the writing community or just from Twitter or social media in general as the ones who you interact with the most to are the ones who read your book and give you best feedback, or is it people like family and friends that you know personally, that are not online, that you ask to do the reading for you, or that you read for beta reading? Either way.
So it's actually kind of a pendulum on that one. Like people who I have gosh, I think I have 3 or 4 in real life friends and family who read for me.
Hmm.
And their feedback is like not perfect, but they do it. And I think like that's one thing to consider because it's a big thing about, oh man, I gave it to this person and they took 2 months, 3 months to get it back to me. But with my family, the people that I have cultivated as my readers, they do it. They read it. And sometimes it just says, I like Mary, but it's done, and I can reach out to them and just say, "Hey, you liked Mary, why?" And they can tell me, and it's not, a big deal.
Okay.
Now, comparatively on Twitter, I can get people to read for me, and they give amazing feedback because they're also authors and they know the ins and out of writing, but they don't always actually do it. So
Okay.
because they're busy, they're writing, they're, trying to sell their book, they're doing all this. Whereas my family at home is just like, I'm home, I'm gonna read, and this is cool. It's like a difference between the feeling of like they know the craft and they're maybe not reading for pleasure as much as like my friend is because they don't know about the craft.
Mm.
And so the feeling again, like I can get feedback from both groups, but the people who are actually professional writers, they don't always actually do the work for me. I've had more professional writers back out and tell me, I'm so sorry, I was too busy. They don't meet my deadline compared to family. But then family's feedback can be kind of rough and the author's feedback is amazing. So again, it's like a swinging pendulum on like what I'm going to get each time, which is why I kind of have cultivated this group of people that I know are reliable. And if somebody falls off, then it's okay because I have like 6 other people who are being consistent at that time. So, and that's another thing that I want to bring up. Like, authors have to be really patient with the beta reading process because like you could get a really good reader 1 month and then in 6 months when you need them down the line they could be completely unavailable. That doesn't mean you give up on them. You just kind of like hold on to their information and come back to them another time. Like never lose a really good reader because they currently don't have good availability. I'm a great example of this. Like if all if
Mm.
all my friends just gave up on me because I was busy that particular month, like they would never be able to get my feedback because I'm always doing something. I'm quite busy.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, but because I've been doing this for so long and I know this can be a roadblock, I always tell people reach out to me anyway. Like, don't assume that I'm too busy. Like, if it's only a chapter, if it's only, you know, 200 pages, like I might be able to fit it in. Maybe I'm on vacation. Maybe I'm, so I'm actually very proactive in that, but some people are not. So the author really has to be like, all right, that was a great reader. You're not available, but I'm gonna keep you on the list and we keep on trucking and we just keep moving.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. So it's good to have multiples, even having multiples to do the beta reading, but then also as a resource so that in case your favorite one is busy, you can have others to reach out to, but just to keep in mind, to keep your favorite one handy just in case they, become available, then you can reach out to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, like so basically you could have a list of 20 people and only 6 read this month and then the next time you get 10 the next time or 8 or and it won't be the same people, but if your list is reliable then you'll be okay.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So, back to your podcast, just share with the audience again, where they can find it, what you talk about in the podcast. And also, I want to know you touched on it just a little bit, but you were talking about how you started it because you wanted to be able to give beta reading advice because you don't charge for your services.
Mhm.
So, I want to know just a little bit more about what inspired you just to go a little bit deeper into that. 'Cause you kind of touched on it a little bit about the podcast, but what inspired you to start the podcast?
Again, the podcast is called Beta Reader Bits, and you can find it on basically everywhere. um, but the person who inspired me to start the podcast, like I was saying, her name is Monica Cox, and I read for her. And she is so motivational. She was just telling me, like, you are so okay. To just illustrate how powerful the single sentence that Monica said to me is like, when I read for her, I had been beta reading for 11 years. And I had been reading 6 to 10 manuscripts a year for 11 years. And this is
Wow.
full manuscripts. This is not even like a friend just sent me a chapter. This is not even like one person had a short story that was only 15 pages. I'm talking about full manuscripts, 6 to 10 a year. So I've read over 100 manuscripts in my career as a beta reader and given full feedback. And she's just like, "This is your talent." And I'm just like, "What?" And
Wow.
so when she said that, and I'll be transparent, like, she was like, "You need to charge for this." And I put my foot down and
See?
I said,
See?
yeah,
Yeah.
but I put my foot down. I said, "I'm not gonna charge. I love the volunteerism of it. Not doing it." And so working with her, I guess, I mean, obviously I'm still in touch with Monica. She's so inspirational to me. And over the time that I worked with her, I just kept thinking, what can I do? What can I do? Because all of a sudden I like understand this about myself and understand that the way I give feedback and the way that I help people is valuable to more people than just those people who actually have, and I will say, the courage to reach out to me, because you're very strong if you're willing to put your book out there for somebody to criticize. So
Mhm.
those who have the courage to reach out to me, we have an excellent relationship and they know what I can do, but no one else knows. And I have to say also, I am floored at how many people don't know what a beta reader is. Like, it's one of those situations where you know something so well and you're surprised when someone
Mhm.
else doesn't.
See, I don't feel so
So
bad because I didn't know about it, like I said, until I heard your podcast.
yeah, a lot of people didn't know. And it's funny, I might take a poll, but a lot of people who I've read for, especially in the last 3 years, I am their first beta reader.
See?
Yeah. So it's been really interesting for me to see that there is kind of a need in the writers community for this knowledge. So again, I didn't want to charge for it. So as I thought of what I could do, I don't want to do a bunch of videos. I don't have time for editing in that sense. And I
Mhm.
knew York was a valuable asset to me in this sense, because I was just like, literally, and this is another this is another thing between Monica and York. This is how we got beta reader bits, because I just tweeted him, DM'd him, and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing a podcast. Can you give me some advice?" And it was like
I know he
a
was all over
rocket.
it. I know he was.
It was like a rocket took off and the show was born. Even during the process, the name that the podcast has was not my original name. And the image that is on the cover is not like, he truly helped me fine tune everything. So Monica's encouragement of me doing it and sharing my gift, and then his expertise and his like belief in me, is how everything came to be. So
That is
magic.
so cool. That is so cool. And your podcast is awesome because I like, podcasts that are informative. Time is precious. So
Mhm.
when I'm listening to something and I'm learning, I'm like, oh, yeah, this is it right here. And your podcast is definitely it. I learned so much in the podcast. I think, like I said, it was the either the first or second, but you just broke down beta readers. I'm like, what? I didn't even know that was a thing. And then you broke
This
down
is
the
the
different
thing.
types and when you should use them. I'm like, wow, this is really good. And just things that I think other writers can definitely benefit from. So I'm glad you're doing a podcast. And it's I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure other writers who are seriously writing, like I'm not like a serious writer at all, but for people who are, like, I know they're going to benefit from the information that you provide and your years of experience. You can hear it even with us talking now. I'm like, wow, she knows what she's talking about. Like, you can definitely hear it. So that
Yeah.
is good. That is really good,
I
and it
try
definitely
not
brings value. Hmm.
Thank you. I try not to talk about things that I don't know about. I'm actually It's funny because, like, I have my own struggles with anxiety, and this is how, cuz I'm a communications major. And
Hmm.
so this is how I got over my fear of giving speeches, is that I started nailing my subjects to the wall. Like, in order to speak confidently, I was like, I need to know every single thing about this topic. And so that helped me to like get over my fear of speaking. And now it's like, if I feel like I know something, I can absolutely talk about it all day. I really, and of course, it's like 12 years. Yeah, you can you can talk about it all day for sure.
Right.
Um so yeah, and that also has to do with like my writing career, because I also have people who read for me. I know both ends of the spectrum on this. Like, I know how to be a beta reader and I know how to work with a beta reader as a fiction author. So yeah, it's like the amount of information that I have about it and my ability to speak on it is based on that, really. Just like being 12
Mhm.
years in the trenches of editing and yeah,
Yeah.
so
You're doing it all. You're doing the writing, you're doing the beta reading for others, you work, it's just you got the podcast, girl, you're doing everything. It's awesome. And
thank
everything
you.
sounds so good and so polished. Like your podcast
Yeah.
sounds really, really polished and really good. So you guys did a great
Thank you.
job on it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So we're going to wrap up the show. I want you to share your contact info. Like, where can people find you on your social media and also where they can buy your book and listen to your podcast? Just one more time.
So my podcast is Beta Reader Bits. It's available on your favorite podcast app. I'm sure you'll find it there. Um, and I am on Twitter and Instagram. I'm on the platforms, but I'm not really on Instagram. If you get my drift. But I'm on Twitter at author TC Lewis. And if you want to find my books, you can go on Amazon and just search my full name, Tiffany Christina Lewis, all spelled the normal way that you are accustomed to. No extra letters or K's instead of C's. Tiffany Christina Lewis on Amazon. You'll find my crime fiction. You'll find my women's lit. And if you click on that help list, which we talked about earlier, you can go from Amazon to Audible if you're interested in the audiobook. And also, my podcast has companion books. So, Beta Bits are the names of the books. There's two right now. I'm working on book 3, and book 4 will come well after that. But they're basically a condensed form of what I share on my podcast. So there are 2 books that accompany the series as well, and you can find them on Amazon by searching for my name, Tiffany Christina Lewis.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, my last question is, Tiffany, do you have any last words of wisdom for the audience?
Yes. I have one thing to say
Mhm.
about beta reading and about, this crazy feedback that we all need so desperately in our writing is getting feedback and working with beta readers, working with any kind of reader whatsoever is all about relationships. In order to cultivate good, strong beta readers and go through the process with them in a, in a most beneficial way for everyone, you really need to have a relationship with your reader. You need to know them and they need to know you. Over time, this is why I read for people, have read for people multiple times. Some people I've read their whole book series through beta reading. Some people have read my whole book series through beta reading. And it's because we have enjoyed knowing each other and helping each other out. Because I do it for free, I mean, I wouldn't do it for someone who treated me badly or was forceful or, the
Mhm.
relationships that I forge with people who read for me and people that I read for make a huge difference in the way that we operate together. So a lot of times people ask where to find beta readers and I always say, "Oh, you can go to Twitter and you can." But the thing about it is you have to be in the writing community to find people who care about you enough to dedicate a month to reading your book.
Mhm.
So you definitely can't just jump on for the first day and start asking for people to read for you. It's very challenging to find beta readers that way. But once you're in the community and you know people and you're being social, which is what social media is for,
That's right.
then it's a lot easier to find people to read for you and to support you through your journey. So I know, again, sometimes we get in desperation mode, which is why we ask our uncle on the couch to read for us, even though he hates to read and he doesn't like our genre. But you have to give it some time. Don't rush. This is how you form your beta reader group. This is how you keep your beta reader group is by having a relationship with them.
Wow, Tiffany, this has been great. I've learned a lot once again, as always, listening to you. I enjoy our conversations.
Yes. My new bestie. I'm putting
Yes.
you on the list. You're on my
Yeah.
my millionaire list.
Yes, definitely, definitely. You're on mine too. You're on mine too. And I will continue supporting you on Twitter and with your podcast because I think it's great and people need to hear it. They can learn a lot and just you putting out that valuable information, using your years of experience and condensing it into those podcasts and it's entertaining and informative. So it's a pleasure to listen to. They are a pleasure to listen to. So thank
Thank
you for
you.
that.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so
I love
much.
it.
Yes, yes, me too, me too. So again, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Call to Action podcast, and I definitely, like I said, enjoyed our conversation. So I would probably like to have you back. I mean, I know you have a lot more, all that experience that you could share. So,
Yes, absolutely. I
mhm.
am always happy to talk about beta reading. I'm always happy to talk about anything related to writing in general. Like, I'm going through the journey. I'm finally ready to query a book, so I'm starting to like develop knowledge about more about traditional publishing, but I know a ton about independent publishing and self-publishing, the craft of writing, and anytime I'm ready
Okay.
to chat.
That sounds good. I'm gonna hold you to that because I definitely can see us doing another one together.
Yeah, anytime.
Yes. All right. So, everyone else, I want to thank you for tuning in. And remember to go to ctamarketing.biz and check out the blog post. I have a guest blogger. Her name is Sarah from economymom.com. And she submits posts and I share them on the site. And they're actually really good and informative posts. You can also check out past episodes of the Call to Action podcast. And you can support the show by buying my book or by purchasing merch, or if you just want to leave a donation, that's always welcome as well. So before we wrap up, I do want to give another special mention to York Campbell. He is the creator of the Poetic Earthlings podcast. You will have the pleasure of hearing both myself and Tiffany in his podcasts. York once again. So if you're into science fiction, go and check it out. His podcasts are so fun, so awesome. And you can hear his podcast on poeticearthlings.com. This concludes episode 44 of the Call to Action podcast. And to all of the entrepreneurs, self starters, authors, and small business owners, remember the code. The journey begins when you take the first step. Courage, optimism, determination, and enthusiasm are the tools that will help you along the way. Until next time. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Call to Action podcast. Make sure to visit me at ctamarketing.biz. There you can find articles for entrepreneurs and self-starters on tech and tips related to navigating this ever-changing world. Until next time.